You know what's coming at you?
Oh, yes. Another one. Let's do it.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So we've spoken out to our electricians, we've spoken to our chippies, we've spoken to our brickies, we've spoken to our plumbers. Today I've got one for the tilers.
Ooh.
We are
Yeah.
the silicon in your shower joint.
Oh, I like it.
So I wanted to hear about your week because you were a little bit down with COVID last week and you've come back, but I know that you've had so much on your plate and you've had this event and that event and seminars and juggling all the life stuff and everything. So tell me about your recent happenings.
Well, I think the biggest thing going on in my world right now is the changes to the R codes.
Ugh.
I know. They've just finished bringing in changes, and I've just finished doing seminars about the National Construction Code, which is a completely different thing. But now they've decided to change the residential design codes, which is what the R codes stands for.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
fun.
I'm just trying to get my head around everything.
So for anyone listening that doesn't know what these things are, maybe do you want to just break down what is the National Construction Code and then what are our codes, what's the difference between them and why they're both important?
Okay.
That's like 5 questions in one.
So I'm massive big thing to unpack.
Yeah. What's the National Construction Code?
So the National Construction Code is made up of many volumes. There are 3 volumes. The volume that relates to housing and to residential is volume 2. It basically lists out minimum standards of construction, and the National Construction Code relates also to the Australian standards. So they go hand in hand, they work together, and it's basically a Bible for how things should be built. But yeah, minimum standards on how roofing is built, how earthworks are done. It covers absolutely everything to do with the nuts and bolts of the build. The residential design codes are different to that. They are more, as the name suggests, around design. They are, whereas the National Construction Code is a national code to be followed and regulations, we also have state regulations, which the residential design codes are specific to WA.
Yeah. And
they are a Bible around designing. So how much of your site are you allowed to cover? How much of that space needs to be open to the sky, so that you've got plenty of natural light coming onto the property and into your home. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of the other things that how close you can build to your boundary.
There's so many things. There's a
lot.
Like this is like hundreds and hundreds of page documents. I can't think of one example.
Okay, so currently there are 2 volumes of the residential design codes. There's one that deals with single house residential and grouped dwellings. So, blocks. Sites with multiple dwellings on them,
as in apartments,
villas, not apartments. So villas, even like your townhouses in your sort of gated communities. Yeah. Whereas the other second volume deals with apartments and high-rise construction.
Yes, of course.
It also, and so like high density living.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they've looked at that. They've looked at the way that the current R codes are set up, and they're wanting to build things a little bit differently. So they can put out a consultation process to designers and professionals in the industry, asking their point of view on how things were going, what changes could we make, how can we make Perth greener again? Because if you think about the older suburbs, they're bigger blocks. There's before subdivisions sort of started coming through and filtering through them. They're bigger blocks. They're, quite a distance away from neighbours. There's plenty of beautiful natural light coming through. There's greenery. There's all of those things. And then if you have a look at the newer subdivisions and the newer estates around Perth, it's just very, I don't know. man-made.
Yeah, it becomes a concrete jungle,
It
and
does.
there's not the connection to nature that we didn't realize that we needed.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the changes are coming into effect to include different densities of living. So we already have the high density document. The new document is going to include low density and medium density. So each site is zoned differently according to the residential design codes. And for lower density, as in your single home on a single block, that's going to have its own code. And then medium density for codes allowing for multiple residences on one site, they're going to have their own code again.
So
and that's
like
going to relate.
stratas and that kind of thing. So when
Yeah,
you've got
that's
like
right.
hammerhead blocks or battle axe or whatever we call them here in
Yes,
Perth.
or smaller blocks as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, battle axe blocks.
Can I ask a question based
Sure.
on what you just said? Do you think, well, two things there, because you said that it goes out to, you know, they put word out for industry professionals to give their two bobs worth.
Yes.
Did they give you any indication as to what the response uptake was like on that, or what the figures were on how many people participated?
No, they don't.
I wonder how many people actually speak up on when those things come round.
Yeah. And if you're not on the mailing list for those things, then you potentially don't even know that it's going to be happening and that it's being put out for comment. So you have to seek that information out. There isn't anything, you know, that an email that goes around to people that are involved in the industry, unless you are signed on to that mailing list. So trying to make sure that you're across it.
Probably a majority of people aren't, because compliance, not everybody wants to be directly, you know, into that unless they have to. But
that's right.
At the same time, it directly impacts you when you are limited with what you can build because of the codes. And you know, you kind of can't whinge about something if you didn't take the opportunity to speak up. But I wonder how many people actually would speak up even with the opportunity, thinking that, you know, would their voice count or not. Obviously if enough people did, it would. But I'd be interested to know the figures on that. Do you think, the second part of my question was, do you think that COVID had a direct impact on this change as well? Given that everybody was at home and then we're all crammed in like sardines, coughing up coronavirus on each other, needing the ventilation and the natural light to heal our bodies naturally. Do you think that had an impact?
No doubt in my mind that has had a direct impact. If this was going on in the background before, I don't know. But I just think that with the way, I mean, some of the things that have come out from councils, because councils, when you are signed on to their systems and use their portals, they do email you about how the changes are going to be put into play in their particular council and what sort of grace period they're going to provide. So a lot of this information is coming out and filtering through from councils now as well. So we're learning about that side of things.
And do you find the councils are pretty good? Are they pretty consistent with the timelines that they're giving as to how they're going to filter into the new policy, or is it quite varied between councils?
It is so varied between councils.
Of course it
is. Some of them will give you cut-off dates for different types of construction and when it needs to be in council according to cut-off dates for the new code to flick over. Some councils just say, if it's not going to be finalised by this date, then you need to design to the new code. So therefore
it is worth, as a designer or a builder, getting or can they contact you?
Absolutely, we're always happy to help.
This.
Yes. Well, we kind of have to be. I mean, this is the sort of information that we are relied on with our clients to be across all of this stuff. So it's something that we need to make sure that we're up to date on, and we're at the seminars learning the changes and how that impacts people, because we have to provide advice to our clients around these sort of compliances.
Yeah, absolutely. how often would you be upgrading your knowledge? Is it as per things change, or what sort of other things you seem to always be going to all the events and seminars, and always pushing to learn and know all the ins and outs around compliance and industry standards,
Yeah.
which I think is amazing. Very admirable and necessary for the service that you
Yeah.
offer.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so
Mm.
they change codes not very often, although in the last few years there's been quite a lot of change
Yeah.
between 2019, when the
Mm.
National Construction Code really started changing,
There was
to
a big
now.
electrical. That was a massive
Oh,
electrical code upgrade about then, wasn't it?
huge.
Yeah.
Yes, and fire separation was a massive one,
Yeah.
especially after the Grenfell disaster in London.
Yeah, of course.
That has just changed how we build across the world.
Yeah.
So there were huge changes that came into effect then.
Mm.
So 2019, 2021, 2022,
Yeah.
and that was the National Construction Code changes. And
Yeah.
even this year, there's been further changes again.
Yeah.
So when these changes happen, we obviously attend a lot of seminars,
Yeah.
because we have to be there to learn each section that is changing, why is it
Mm.
changing, what is changing in it, and then how we can filter that information through to our clients. The
Yeah.
same is true when the R codes change. We need to do the
Mm.
same thing.
Yeah.
So, around those changes, especially big changes like this one and the
Mm.
changes that have recently been happening around the National Construction Code, there is a
Mm.
lot of professional learning that goes on.
Yeah.
But between those times, we also do a lot of professional learning within the professional groups that we are members of as well. And just trying to keep our knowledge up to date and just really make sure that we've honed our skills and that we're across everything as much as we possibly can be, because
Yeah.
we want to provide our clients the best service possible. And that's the only way that I can see that happening.
Because as you were talking just then, I was thinking, because there has been so many changes,
Yeah.
it's hard enough for you to stay on top of it all. I mean, don't mean hard, like it's a lot, right?
It is.
There's
There
a
is a
lot of
lot. Yeah.
effort for you to keep up with it all and then implement it, and especially when it's all been implemented at different timelines, it's like, what's this council doing again? Oh, hang on, when does this one come in? You've really got to be across the ball. So
Yeah.
it makes it really, really tough then for a builder to be across that, let
Yeah.
alone then if a homeowner was self-project managing and doing their own council applications. So I can see this
Yes.
where this would really save people a lot of time. I mean, you save them time anyway. It's why we push what we do, because we're going to be saving builders and homeowners a ton of time. But for
Yeah.
those that do want to tackle it themselves,
Yes.
what's the repercussions as far from a process perspective? What are the repercussions of not knowing said upgrades or changes,
Yeah.
in the reality of actually going through the process? If
Yeah.
you've designed, first of all, I guess it starts with design. If you've
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know what? It goes back even further than that. You could have purchased a block of land thinking that I can do XYZ on that block of land, and you've
Yes.
actually committed to the purchase, only to then go through the process and find out that no, you can't do that because there's been a change in code.
Yes.
Now, have you sought out advice in the front end from a designer? Is the
Yeah.
designer knowledgeable about that stuff? And have they got someone like yourself, Cos, to lean to get that information if they've not learnt it themselves? You can see how it can turn to shit really, really easy just
Yep.
from purchasing the wrong bloody block of land, let alone anywhere in between to
That's it.
construction.
And I mean, another example of that would be if you were renovating a home, or
Mm.
if you wanted to even demolish a house, because there are a lot of big blocks out there that people want to get their hands on.
Yeah.
They've got old houses on,
Mm.
and their idea is, right, I'll purchase this, we'll knock it over, and then I'll build the house that I want on there. And that may be all well and good.
But heritage listed.
Well, that's it. It's heritage listed, or it might be in an area that doesn't allow for demolition.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You may only be able to renovate the property. There are so many different things, and each
Mm.
house is zoned differently. Each
Yeah.
site is zoned differently. Each council is different. So
Mm.
before you're purchasing and really get carried away in the excitement of the project, you need to do a little bit of due diligence and have a chat to council, see what the zoning of the block is before you even keep going with it. So
yeah, absolutely,
it's well worth it, because otherwise the repercussions are you're going to waste probably a lot of time and a lot of money, and maybe not even be able to build what you want to build, which
would be such a shame.
That's heartbreaking.
If you've gone through the purchase process of buying that block of land, which is obviously a financial investment, stamp duty, all of that sort of stuff, you can't claim that back.
You really can't.
And then you can't necessarily always sell the block of land in a hurry either, because then it's like, you know, especially if capital gains or something. I mean, I don't know finance and things, but I know enough to know that it can cost you more money if you're selling within a certain period of time. So, you know, it can turn disastrous pretty bloody quick.
It certainly can, yeah.
So with what you offer, I know you work a lot with builders directly. That's you know, your preferred model, and you know, that's where you're at your best. For a homeowner that wants to do this due diligence on a block of land, first and foremost, are they better off going directly to council? Can they lean on someone like yourself? I know that they could even get in contact with a building designer that would that should be up to scratch with this knowledge, and if they're not, then they can then rely on someone like yourself to do this. Let's take it from if a homeowner wanted to find out some info. I guess the most efficient thing is going to be for them to go directly to council, because they're going to get the answer they need then and there. But perhaps what are some key questions they can be asking? Because we know what it's like from council's perspective as well. And council get 1 million calls a day from a lot of different people asking a lot of different things.
Yeah,
so I guess the obvious one is when you call council, what you want to ask for is to speak to the town planners or the planning and building department, first and foremost. That's going to get you through to the department that you want to speak to. Once you get a planner or duty planner, what are the next questions you should be asking?
You should be asking, what is that site zone? So if you're looking at a block of land, well, actually it doesn't really matter if it's a block of land or if it has a house on it. Every single site has a zoning. Find out if it is in any sort of special control area. Special control areas will basically dictate what you can and can't do on that block. You mentioned heritage before, Bron. That would be classed as a special control area. So in heritage listed areas or in heritage zoned areas, there are stipulations of things that you can do and things that you can't do. You may not be able to, for example, touch the front facade of the building, or only be able to do certain things to the front facade of the building, because that has to remain looking with as like a heritage sort of front to the house.
That's just traditional.
So yeah, that's right. So what you may have to do is instead look at doing additions to the rear of the property, if that's what you wanted to do. So that's probably the two biggest questions that I would be asking is, what is the block zoned, and is it in a special control area? If it is in a special control area, that's the document that you need to be asking for. Can I please have a copy of that document? And that document will list out everything that you can and can't do on that site and to that property.
Yeah. And that should tell you in a second if you've got grand plans for doing some beautiful modern building with funky roof lines and, you know, modern day cladding, you know, straight away you know that the house isn't going to look how you want it to look. And so it's probably time to perhaps look at a different option. But at least you found out and you've avoided any further, even if you didn't purchase a property, but you went as far as making inquiries with the agent and going through the rigmarole with your finance, you know, that's a lot of time wasted only to end up not being able to do what you want to do. Whereas you can make a quick phone call, ask a couple of questions, job done.
That's it.
Or not done.
Well, that's right. But better to find that out early on and not have invested. Yeah, well, that's it. Not having invested, you know, months of planning and applications and, you know, sorting out your finance and all that sort of thing, only to have to walk away. That would just be so heartbreaking, especially once you've gone down that path and you're, you know, months into purchasing that property. You're so emotionally invested because you know what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
But then to have that heartbreaking reality come crashing down that you can't do that, and you now have to walk away from the project. That would be absolutely horrible.
And there's, or you've got to modify what you're doing to the project, which is also a drain on emotional investment, which we speak about in our previous episode. If you want to touch back to episode 3, we talk about emotional investment. But, you know, then there becomes a financial investment in that as well, because if you then have to make a round of changes, you know, that's reapplications, new design fees.
Yeah.
Or, you know, engaging the builder again to get new sets of building advice. It's a big strain on both time, emotion, and all of them. It's a huge investment, and then a reinvestment because we could have just asked a few questions in the front end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So where are you at now with your refreshing of the new codes and planning?
So the other thing that I have to do is I will go through all of the learning process and work out what is the difference between the old code and the new code, and then I need to pass that information on to my team as well. So currently I'm going through all of that at the moment, and I will be rolling that out to the team next week, ahead of the first lot of dates and cutoffs on the 12th of June. So
that's crazy.
It all has to happen pretty quick.
And just to sort of summarize the new developments of the planning of the new R codes.
Yes.
What do you foresee that the impact that will have in the next, say, 10, 20 years with this with these new policies in place?
I think we will see almost a return, maybe not to the block sizes that we've seen in the past in Perth, but definitely more greenery. And I'm not talking just parks and things scattered through developments. I'm talking about in our own homes, in and around our own homes. You know, there's a lot of changes that have happened. I'm just going to flick back to the NCC around condensation, which has obviously got to do, it's a huge topic at the moment, which has got a lot to do with natural light and ventilation. So the residential design codes and the changes to that, especially bringing in the changes to low and medium density like they have, I really feel goes hand in hand with the changes to the NCC. So it's just going to make things easier for them to correlate and to actually be working together instead of against each other. But I feel like our designs are going to have to change a little bit to really make sure that we've nailed down the changes in the requirements for the residential design codes. I feel like there's going to be a little bit more space on people's sites. And just I just think it's really a really good change.
Beautiful. So there you go, all you sardines out there that are stuck in the tin. Good news on the horizon.
We're going to open the lid a little bit more.
We're going to open the lid a little bit more, wind that back just a little bit further. I love that. Well, that was really good insight. Good on you.
Into my world and my week.
That's amazing. Yeah. Good on you for, doing all that work for the rest of us that don't really like it that much.
Welcome to my life.
This is why I love having you as part of my team.
It's great. It's great.
Yep.
Great to impart that knowledge. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's right. You find that satisfying?
I do. I really do. Yeah. I feel like I've done my little bit.
Yep. Your big bit. Don't underestimate the size of that. It's a very crucial, important part to the process.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.